Imagine a relentless campaign, not of massive battles, but more like persistent, pinpoint strikes chipping away at an adversary's very lifeline. Over this past weekend, Ukraine dramatically escalated its long-range drone attacks, reaching deep into Russian territory. We're talking vital oil depots, military facilities, hundreds of miles in the front lines. These aren't just isolated incidents, They seem to be part of a calculated strategy. Ukraine actually calls it death by 1,000 bombs, and it's aimed squarely at Russia's oil-dependent economy. It raises a crucial question. What does this really mean for Russia's ability to fund its war? We're going to explore how, surprising new drone technology is making these deep strikes possible. And we'll examine whether these physical explosions are maybe finally succeeding, where traditional Western sanctions seem to have fallen short, perhaps fundamentally reshaping the conflict. So what does this all mean for the bigger picture you need to understand? Today we're taking a deep dive into these evolving dynamics, focusing specifically on how Ukraine's strategic long-range drone attacks are targeting Russia's vital oil infrastructure. We'll be drawing from recent news reports, military analyses, and economic data to give you a comprehensive understanding of this critical strategic shift.
It is truly fascinating. I mean, watching how these seemingly disparate attacks, these individual incidents, are actually forming a cohesive strategy. They reveal some profound shifts, not just on the battlefield, but, in the economic and diplomatic spheres as well. We really are witnessing a pivotal moment, I think, in how this conflict is being fought.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Recent reports describe a significant surge in these Ukrainian deep strike attacks. Can you walk us through some of the most impactful incidents from, say, this past weekend, and what kinds of targets are they prioritizing?
Certainly, yeah. The past weekend saw a definite escalation. It really underscores Ukraine's expanded reach. So on August 3rd, there was a particularly devastating drone strike. It hit Rosneft's Adler oil depot down in Sochi.
Sochi, wow, that's deep. How far is that?
It's a staggering 330 miles from the front line.
330 miles.
Then that one strike alone reportedly destroyed over 500,000 gallons of oil.
500,000.
Yeah, 528,000 gallons, or about 1,700 metric tons. It even temporarily shut down Sochi airport for a few hours. And while the Russian governor tried to sort of dismiss it as just drone debris.
Right, I saw that claim.
Yeah, well, videos from the scene clearly showed a functioning Ukrainian drone making a direct hit. So that narrative didn't really hold up.
That's a huge operational blow, obviously, but also symbolic, right? Hitting Sochi like that. And it wasn't just Sochi, was it? There were others.
Oh, far from it. Just the day before, August 2nd, the Voronezh region was subjected to a massive attack. The local governor, Gusev, claimed 15 Ukrainian drones were involved, targeting the Annanefteprodukt oil storage facility. There were some reports, unfortunately, of civilian injuries, but the focus of the strikes was clearly the oil infrastructure.
Right.
And Reuters also reported an oil refinery in Ryazan was hit. That's about 110 miles southeast of Moscow, another substantial fire there.
What's striking about these incidents is how they seem to fit into this larger strategic pattern you mentioned. Beyond just the oil infrastructure, are we seeing other types of targets getting hit?
Yeah, it's definitely clear this is part of a broader campaign. So besides the oil facilities, Ukraine's SBU, their intelligence agency, they confirmed they struck the Primorsko-Akhtarsk military airfield.
And that's significant because...
Well, it's a critical facility. Reports suggest Putin uses it for launching his own long-range drone strikes against Ukraine.
Okay. Turning the tables a bit.
Exactly. And also in Penza, a factory that supplies electronics equipment to the Russian military was apparently hit. So, you see, it's not just about oil. It's about systematically trying to dismantle the Russian war machine piece by piece. This multifaceted approach, that's what Ukraine calls its death by 1,000 bombs strategy. It's not about one massive knockout blow, but a continuous series of these cumulative strikes designed to exhaust and ultimately maybe cripple Russia's economic and military capacity.
Right, a war of attrition, but focused on infrastructure and logistics.
Precisely. And, while Russia frequently claims to shoot down huge numbers of drones, they reported 338 on August 2nd, for example.
Which always seems like a high number.
It does. And the undeniable direct hits we're seeing, like in Sochi and Voronezh, they certainly challenge the, let's say, the veracity of those claims.
These deep strikes, reaching 330 miles in, they clearly indicate a pretty advanced capability now, far beyond the front lines. What's powering this? I mean, how has Ukraine's drone technology, maybe their tactics, evolved to allow this kind of deep penetration?
Well, the evolution has been rapid. It's actually quite impressive. Ukraine is employing a new generation of drones, yes, but also highly sophisticated tactics alongside them. One key innovation seems to be this mass breakthrough strategy.
Gas breakthrough. What's that about?
So instead of sending one or two drones, they're sending dozens simultaneously. And crucially, they fly along different routes at varying speeds, different altitudes. This coordinated swarm, the idea is to just overwhelm and overload Russian air defenses and also their electronic warfare, or EW, barriers.
Saturate the defenses. Makes sense.
Exactly. And the success we saw in Sochi and Voronezh, well, it certainly suggests this tactical evolution is yielding pretty significant results. It seems to be working.
So it's not just about having one fancy super drone, but more about the coordination, the intelligent swarm approach that's genuinely innovative. What else are they cooking up in terms of drone capabilities?
Precisely. It's the tactics as much as the tech. And it goes further. Back in May, Ukraine apparently launched its first AI-powered Stratforce drone carriers.
Drone carriers, like flying motherships.
Kind of, yeah. Think of them as motherships that can carry smaller FPV, that's first-person view drones, much deeper, maybe up to 186 miles beyond the front lines for more covert attacks.
Okay, extending the reach of those smaller, nimble drones.
Right. It extends the reach and the stealth factor. And they're also actively working on drones that can operate, quote, beyond the radio horizon.
Beyond the radio horizon. What does that mean practically?
Right. It means they could potentially attack unhindered even when the Earth's curvature blocks the direct line of sight needed for traditional video signals or control links.
So harder to jam or detect.
Potentially, yes. Currently, this tech is apparently in early stages for shorter-range FPV drones, extending their useful range to maybe 31 miles or so. But the future plan seems to be integrating it into long-range drones. That could effectively eliminate the need for traditional radio guidance and make them much more resilient to Russian EW.
Which then raises the big question, doesn't it? How quickly can Russia adapt its defenses to this? Ukraine seems locked in this cycle of rapid, relentless innovation.
That's the key question. Ukraine's continuous drive to develop, as they put it, better, stronger, faster, and more powerful drones is absolutely crucial for them to stay ahead. And the fact that Russia ordered its own oil and gas producers to install anti-drone protection way back in December 2023, well, that clearly indicates they recognize the severe threat these drones pose even then.
Okay, so the immediate damage from the strikes is clear, big fires, lost product. Let's zoom out a bit, though. What's the bigger economic play here? Why is Russia's oil infrastructure so utterly critical to its war effort, and what kind of financial impact are these strikes actually having?
Well, Russia's reliance on oil and gas revenue is just immense. It's truly foundational to their entire state budget and economy. I mean, this sector, it accounts for a staggering 30 to 50% of Russia's federal budget over the last decade.
30 to 50%, wow.
Yeah, and an average of about 20% of its annual GDP. So, put simply, Russia needs its oil money to fund its war. Without those revenues, the war machine eventually, grinds to a halt.
So hitting those facilities isn't just about causing a spectacular fire for the news cycle. It's about directly starving the war machine of its fuel, its funding.
Exactly. It's hitting them right in the pocketbook.
But are there arguments, maybe, that Russia could weather this? Maybe through other revenue streams or stockpiles they built up?
Well, Russia has certainly attempted to adapt, and they do have reserves. But the impact is undeniable, and it seems to be accumulating. Ukrainian strikes were already credited with contributing to knocking out about 10% of Russia's oil refining capacity by February this year.
And refining is key, right? Not just crude oil.
Absolutely vital. Refining is what transforms the crude oil into much more valuable, usable products like petroleum and diesel, things they can sell for higher prices or use directly. So destroying that refining capacity limits what Russia can actually sell effectively and, crucially, what it can use for its own military.
And these refined products have a direct military impact too, don't they? It's not just about exports losing value.
Absolutely. By early March, estimates suggested these drone strikes had destroyed or prevented the transit of something like 53 million tons of Russia's oil products. And that targeting includes refineries, storage tanks, pipelines, pumping stations, the whole chain. And this is critical because those refined products, diesel for tanks, for armored vehicles, aviation fuel for aircraft, they are absolutely essential for sustained operations on the front lines. If you take those out, you force troops maybe to attack on foot, making them, as some analyses bluntly put it, easy pickings for Ukrainian defenders. It directly hits Russia's ability to fight.
Okay, so a direct impact on battlefield capability.
Yeah.
What about the financial strain back in Moscow? Are we seeing concrete evidence, like numbers, showing Russia feeling the pinch?
Oh, without a doubt. The numbers are starting to look quite stark. Russia's oil and gas revenue, the money going into its federal budget, reportedly fell by a third by July 3rd this year. That marked its lowest point since January 2023.
A third lower. Okay.
And for the first half of 2025, the revenue was down 17% compared to the previous year. Projections for July 2025 suggested revenue would be 37% lower than July 2024. That points towards maybe a 20% decline for the first 7 months of the year on year.
Those are significant drops.
They are. And on top of that, Russian oil companies reportedly lost around 24.5 tons of actual product just in the past couple of weeks due to these strikes. So less money coming in means Russia can't afford as much equipment or munitions or maybe even troop wages down the line. You couple that with the refined oil physically not reaching the front lines, it really creates a devastating 1-2 punch. Economic destabilization, well, it seems clearly on the horizon, potentially pushing Russia closer to a breaking point.
Right. We hear so much about Western sanctions against Russia's oil, but many sources suggest they haven't been the silver bullet people hoped for. What's the fundamental difference between those sanctions and what Ukraine is doing with these bombs? And why does Ukraine seem to believe its bombs are, quote, the only sanction that really works?
That's a really key point. Western sanctions, things like the price caps, the EU just lowered its cap from $60 down to about $47.60 per barrel in mid-July.
Yeah.
And the restrictions on seaborne imports that the EU, UK, G7, Australia put in place back in December 2022. They certainly aim to cut Russia's profits. However, Russia has shown remarkable agility, I suppose, in finding ways around them.
How have they managed that? It sounds complicated.
It is quite complex. Russia very quickly built up what's now known as a shadow fleet. We're talking maybe up to 1,300 ships. These ships often operate under different flags, sometimes conceal their locations, basically doing anything to evade maritime law and sanctions enforcement.
A whole ghost navy, essentially.
Pretty much. And on top of that, there are commercial loopholes. Countries like India have been buying Russian crude at steep discounts. Then they refine it themselves and re-export those products, sometimes even back to Europe, for a tidy profit.
So the oil still flows, just through different routes and hands.
Exactly. And China, for instance, secured apparently up to half of Russia's oil exports in 2023, often below market price, which gives them significant leverage, too. The Kremlin has even somewhat boastfully claimed to have developed a certain immunity to sanctions.
Okay, so sanctions might crimp the profits, make things more difficult, more expensive for Russia, but they haven't stopped the flow entirely. And this is where Ukraine's direct action, the bombs, comes in physically stopping the product itself.
Precisely. Ukraine's logic here is pretty stark, and you could say quite clear. Ineffective sanctions don't matter when you take out the oil that Putin is selling. The goal isn't just to lower the price Putin gets, it's to destroy Putin's profits by physically destroying the actual product, regardless of price caps or shadow fleets.
It bypasses the whole complex financial maneuvering.
It does, and it forces us to ask that crucial question again. Are we seeing a fundamental shift here? Is kinetic action, physical destruction, proving more impactful in this case than traditional financial leverage? I mean, the very fact that Russia ordered its oil and gas producers to install anti-drone protection last December, that speaks volumes about where they perceive the real immediate threat to be coming from. It's not the bankers, it's the drones.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Beyond the military and the economic impacts, which are huge, these deep strikes must also be creating significant psychological pressure inside Russia itself. What stands out to you on that front?
Yeah, that's a really important dimension. What's perhaps most impactful here is how these attacks bring the war directly home to the Russian people. You know, Putin has largely tried to shield the general population, especially in major cities far from the front, from the realities of the conflict.
Keep it distant, something happening over there.
Exactly. But strikes on places like Sochi, a popular resort town, or near Moscow, that shatters the illusion of safety and distance. Social media reports coming out of Sochi after the recent strikes describe scenes of, well, panic, hasty evacuations, and lines of ambulances and firefighters.
That sense of vulnerability must be unnerving.
Deeply unnerving. And this growing psychological pressure, this pervasive sense of insecurity, well, some analysts suggest it may soon become too much for the population to bear. It could potentially force a crack in Putin's narrative and maybe even his whole invasion strategy.
A potential internal pressure point building up.
Potentially. Though we have to note, despite these internal issues, Russia is, of course, continuing its own relentless attacks on Ukrainian cities. Mykolaiv and Kiev were hit recently, and there was that awful attack on July 31st that reportedly killed 31 people.
Right. It's important to remember the ongoing toll on Ukraine. And stepping back again, just to consider the wider geopolitical chessboard.
Yeah.
This is all unfolding just as U.S. President Donald Trump set that deadline for peace. What's the context there, and how might it intersect with these drone strikes?
Right, that adds another layer of complexity. President Trump set an August 8th deadline that's very soon for Putin to essentially end the war. And he threatened potential secondary tariffs if no progress is made. These could be huge tariffs, maybe 25–50%, even speculatively up to 500%, on countries that continue buying Russian oil.
That could really bite, affecting those shadow fleet operations and discount buyers?
It could significantly raise the stakes for them, yes. And Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, actually met with Putin in Moscow on August 6th for high-level talks about this.
So diplomatic pressure coinciding with this intensified kinetic pressure from Ukraine.
Exactly. Now, the Kremlin's public response, via spokesman Dmitry Peskov, was again to claim Russia has developed a certain immunity to sanctions.
The standard line.
The standard line. But the timing of Ukraine's intensified deep strikes certainly adds another layer of immediate, very tangible pressure on Moscow right as these diplomatic efforts are playing out.
It really highlights this multi-layered pressure cooker situation Russia finds itself in. You've got the military action from Ukraine, the undeniable economic decline, and this growing internal psychological strain.
Absolutely. And the combined effect of all those things could potentially be far more impactful than any single measure applied alone.
It really begs the question, will this mounting, multifaceted pressure finally force a different calculation in Moscow? Will something have to give?
That remains the crucial unanswered question.
Right. So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, our listener? This deep dive really shows us how Ukraine's innovative drone warfare isn't just about, blowing things up. It's a precise economic and psychological weapon. It seems designed specifically to drain Russia's war chest and maybe erode domestic support for the conflict. It's fundamentally reshaping how this war is being fought, and it presents a fascinating, maybe even disturbing new challenge to how global powers try to apply pressure and influence events.
Indeed. The full impact, the final outcome of these strikes, it won't be immediate. Change takes time. But the financial strain is already clearly visible in the data. And the psychological pressure, well, you have to assume it's building steadily beneath the surface in Russia. It certainly challenges our traditional understanding of how modern conflicts are fought, and maybe more importantly, how economic leverage is truly applied in a world where traditional sanctions can, apparently, be circumvented with enough effort and shadowy ships.
And maybe a final thought for you to mull over as we close. If those traditional sanctions can be bypassed like this, and physical destruction, these bombs, are proving to be arguably the most effective sanction in this particular conflict. What does that imply for the future? For future global conflicts, and the tools nations might increasingly employ to enforce their will when diplomacy and financial measures fall short. Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.